This is a video that I really desperately did not want to make, but it's a video that must be made because this is what it's come down to. This is what we can expect for the rest of the series and likely many more Disney movies to come. The Last Jedi is an abomination. It's an insult to everything Star Wars is and was. It's a narrative disaster that destroys everything I've loved about this series. No matter my criticisms for the prequels or Rogue One or The Force Awakens, all 5 of those movies combined could not possibly destroy Star Wars anywhere near the degree that this one film does. Now, let me get some good things out of the way first. Visually, this is the best Star Wars film ever made, hands down. Every frame is gorgeous. The sets are fantastic. The effects are amazing. The CGI, while lacking in some areas, is mostly beautiful and utilized effectively. This is definitely up there with Blade Runner 2049. The cinematography, the shots, the editing, the colors, the lighting, everything was almost entirely perfect. I had a few nitpicks in some areas that I felt were way darker than necessary, but those few things feel so insignificant compared to this masterpiece of visual storytelling. When you go to a movie, this is the kind of thing you want to see. These are the effects you want to be treated to. It's so refreshing to see movies blend CGI and practical effects as well as they can, unlike Thor Ragnarok and Justice League, which lazily infest their films with as much CGI as they possibly can. Nearly every frame of this movie was marvelous and an absolute joy to watch. The soundtrack is also fantastic. I wasn't a big fan of the Force Awakens score, which I felt wasn't bad but was incredibly forgettable. Certainly nowhere near as good as John Williams is capable of. This movie seems to get back on track with a score that instantly draws you back into this world. While a lot of the most memorable tracks are admittedly remasters or redesigns of tracks used in the original trilogy, I couldn't help but smile when some of the score started playing. It was great to see a Star Wars movie finally look and sound like a Star Wars movie again. Sound design was fantastic as usual. Everything has a weighty sound to it, everything from explosions to lightsaber clashes to the sound of ships flying around. There was even a surprising amount of care put into the sound and look of the creatures they had in this movie. In fact, I think there was entirely too much care put into the sound and look of the alien creatures, which, to be perfectly honest, played such an unimportant role that if you took them out of the movie entirely, absolutely nothing would change. At least some of the actors were good. Carrie Fisher and Mark Hamill gave it their all, although I hated what they did with Luke and Leia, and we'll get into that bullshit in a minute. Mark really does bring Luke to life. He doesn't feel like some grumpy old man pretending to be Luke. This actually feels like Mark Hamill was really trying to be Luke Skywalker again. Carrie Fisher is significantly less awkward in this movie than she was in the last, at least in terms of her performance. We'll get into the part that was awkward in a minute. Andy Serkis is great as Snoke. Although he's still CGI, it's definitely good CGI, and he brings that character to life just as he did with Gollum and Caesar. These 3 actors are phenomenal, and they carry the film, which is good because they are literally the only good actors in the entire film. And that is, unfortunately, where my praise ends. The movie looks and sounds good. If that's all you care about, then you'll probably love this movie. If you've never seen a Star Wars film outside of The Force Awakens, you'll also probably love this movie. But if you're like me, someone who's been a fan of this series since I was a little kid, then this is the biggest slap in the fucking face to the original trilogy and its fans that I have ever seen. The sheer level of blatant disrespect to the characters, the story, the world, and the lore feels like the ultimate act of betrayal that I have ever seen put to film. Someone asked me if this movie was the Halo 5 Guardians of Star Wars, but honestly, that's insulting to Halo 5 Guardians. At least that game had like 1 or 2 things that could almost be considered to be good, which is a hell of a lot more good than there was in this movie. The Last Jedi is an insult to everything we know and love about Star Wars. There were various gaping plot holes littered throughout this disjointed mess of a plot. Character motivations are ridiculous and often make little to no sense. There are multiple subplots that have no satisfying payoff and are often completely and utterly useless. There is a literal purple-haired feminist archetype in this movie whose sole purpose is to make Poe look like an idiot and get needlessly redeemed for her irrational behavior because, oh no, we can't have a man make a plan that makes sense. Character motivations flip on a dime. Kylo Ren is such an inconsistent, melodramatic annoyance that I was begging for someone to chop his ugly fucking head off. Logic is thrown completely out the window in multiple instances. Multiple key plot points make absolutely no sense and have no explanation that fits in in this already extremely contradictory story, and characters either have no backstory, are treated like shit, or are so useless that you have to wonder why they were even in this movie. Before the film came out, there was unending praise for this fat Asian bitch, because apparently being the first fat Asian bitch in a Star Wars movie means you're automatically a good actress and have a pivotal role. The fat Asian is called Rose, and she is the new Jar Jar Binks of this story. She offers so little of value that if you took her out, it would honestly just make the movie so much better. Her role is so insignificant and stupid that I dearly hoped that she would die. I have never seen such a bullshit nonsense character since the Robo Girl from Destiny. She had no right or reason to be in this film and only served to pad out its length in a throwaway subplot that ended up being totally irrelevant anyway. For all of that, I could either forgive or at the very least ignore to some extent if we went issue by issue. The thing that truly, dearly pisses me the fuck off is what they did to Luke Skywalker, the lore, the world, Snoke, Rey, Kylo Ren, and Leia. Kylo Ren changes his mood in every other shot. I forgot how many times he just flipped his personality throughout the course of this movie. He is such an inconsistent, badly written character that it almost makes Rey look good by comparison. The character himself is so unrelatable, so utterly irredeemable and pointless, that they may as well just kill him and ended the series here. Snoke was such a terribly underutilized, missed opportunity. He's shown using the Force in ways comparable or even arguably better than the Emperor. This guy could have been the next true villain, but his backstory is never explained. His skill with the Force is never mentioned. Where he comes from, what he's done, how he ever met Kylo Ren in the first place is just shrugged off. And even he is treated like a dumb prop. Rey is as much of a Mary Sue as always. Remember all the people saying that she'd have her backstory explained? How we'd have answers as to how she can use the Force so proficiently? Well, we have an explanation and it gives no answers. Her parents are irrelevant. She never received training in combat or the Force prior to The Force Awakens. She has the lamest backstory ever. She's nothing. She's not related to anyone special, not unique in any way. She's perfect at everything because she is a Mary Sue. The movie makes no attempt to remedy her badly written persona or explain why she can do anything without prior knowledge or training. In some ways, she's even worse in this movie than she was in the last. I think her acting is better, but saying the worst actress ever found a way to improve isn't saying much of anything. Leia honestly should have been killed off. She plays such an insignificant role in this movie that you could easily take her out and not really much of anything would be different. She offers nothing of value to the plot, is unconscious for almost all of it anyway, and has one of the dumbest plot conveniences I have ever seen in my entire life. Luke has been annihilated. They have taken what was once the main character of the series, a character who had 3 movies to evolve, to go through a journey that changed him as a person, to struggle time and time again through a series of trials and errors. He found a way to rise up and become the hero he needed to be. His journey wasn't perfect. None of these movies are free of criticism. He was incredibly bland in the first film, and he was a far cry from some of the more memorable heroes in film or literature. But he was still a likable and fun character. We had an entire trilogy to see him evolve from a farm boy in the desert to a full-fledged Jedi Knight. That journey is unforgettable. It's something that'll stick with me and many others for years to come. But everything is thrown out the window in this movie. Luke is treated with the utmost disrespect. I have never seen a character so humiliatingly eviscerated in my life. I've seen characters get butchered before. I've seen them do things that they would never do, seen them get thrown into situations they'd never put themselves in. But Luke isn't just badly written in this film. He is not the same character anymore. Mark Hamill definitely gave it his all. He definitely tried as hard as he could to bring the character to life once again, but they fundamentally destroyed who Luke is. He does things he would never do, especially given everything we learned and experienced throughout his own trilogy. They turned Luke into a character he was never meant to be, and that is unforgivable. Now, I'm gonna talk about spoilers here, so if you really don't want to hear them, skip to this time on the screen now. If you are a Star Wars fan, and if you love this series the way I once did, then listen to this and don't watch this movie. Don't support it. Don't watch its inevitable sequel. Don't let these people get away with what is undoubtedly the greatest disservice to Star Wars ever. The Last Jedi starts off with the Resistance leaving their base and jumping into lightspeed. There are practically no ships in their fleet. They are so small and insignificant compared to the First Order that it blows my mind that no one thought to remedy this very serious issue. At no point is it ever explained why the First Order is so big or how Snoke brought them together. At no point is it ever explained why the Resistance is so small when they were Empire in a Republic-controlled galaxy for 30 years. So Poe leads some bombers to take out a Star Destroyer, all of the bombers explode, and Poe is demoted for it. The one bomber that takes out the destroyer has this one Asian bitch in it. Let me put this into perspective for you. The bomber has a latch that allows the bombs to fall out of the ship like they would from modern planes, right? She is standing on a ramp just above the vacuum of space. She's wearing no mask or helmet or suit of any kind, yet she can breathe perfectly fine, and there's no visible shield to show her being protected from the vacuum, so we can only assume that the movie makers forgot they were in space and allowed gravity to still work and air to still be breathable. This Asian bitch is also important because she's the sister of the fat Asian bitch later in the movie. So the entire First Order arrives to chase them through hyperspace. They're running low on fuel and can't outrun them because they have nowhere to go and they can be tracked anyway. After being bitch slapped and electrocuted by Snoke, Kylo Ren goes to kill Leia, but pussy's out at the last second. But the TIE fighters blow her up anyway and she dies. Or does she? Nope, she doesn't. Now, let me walk you through this. I have no footage of this scene, and you'll probably think I'm lying to you if you haven't watched this movie yet. But believe me, holy fucking shit do I wish I was lying right now. So, the TIE fighters bomb the bridge, and Leia is floating out in the vacuum of space for an extended period of time, right? By all means, she should be dead, even if the bombs miraculously did not touch her. Even if she wasn't hit by any debris, the vacuum of space would have rendered her dead anyway. Now, this would be the thing that everyone in their right mind would think, right? So she's shown floating out in the debris, seemingly unconscious and likely dead from a lack of oxygen, you know, the logical thing. But then, her eyes open, she extends an arm, and she floats like fucking Mary Poppins. I'm Mary Poppins, y'all! Back into the ship. So Mary Poppins Leia literally goes up to the door and just knocks on it, and then everyone lets her in, and somehow this doesn't depressurize that area. I don't really think Rian Johnson understands how space works. And then she falls over, and they're like, oh no, and then they put her in the emergency room and proceed to forget it ever happened for the entire rest of the movie. This is never, ever, at any point brought up ever again throughout the entire course of the movie, and nobody ever asks or mentions it to her, nor is it ever explained what the fuck just happened. I was sitting in a full theater, and as soon as it happened, the whole place erupted with laughter. It was the absolute most retarded goddamn thing I've ever seen in a movie in my entire life. It made Tommy Wiseau's idea of flying his car off a roof in the room because he wanted to be a vampire almost make tangible, logical sense in comparison to the absolute mindfuckery that was this scene. Look, I get it. Leia is still a Skywalker and still has the Force, allegedly, right? But when was she ever taught to use it? At no point has it ever been mentioned, shown, or explained that Leia had any sort of proficiency in the Force to any degree. Yet she pulls a fucking space Jesus out of her ass and levitates harmlessly to the door, totally immune to the vacuum of space. There are only 2 times in the entire Star Wars extended anything that I can think of where someone survived in space, being the one Jedi who was an alien and didn't breathe air anyway, at least I don't think. Who the fuck cares about the Clone Wars? And Starkiller, who was thrown out into space and I guess technically died, but was brought back by Vader, pretty much reconstructing his entire body. But Leia just bullshits her way into survival in the dumbest way ever, and nobody thinks to ask what the hell happened. So because Leia is bedridden and Admiral Akbar is dead because he was on the bridge too, command goes to a purple-haired cunt who has literally no idea what she's doing. Rather than making a plan, she has them keep flying ahead until they run out of fuel and die. Poe points out how dumb of an idea this was, and throughout most of the movie, I actually thought they would make Poe truly take up command and show this Tumblerina who's boss. That's not even close to what happens. So Finn tries to find Rey and meets Fat Asian Bitch, where they figure out that the First Order is tracking them through a tracker thingy in Snoke's Star Destroyer, which is just like any other Star Destroyer, but way fucking bigger than all the other Star Destroyers. They need to get in, but don't know how to do that without alerting anyone, so they call that orange bitch from The Force Awakens somehow to ask if she can do it, but she's too busy killing people, so she tells them to find a master hacker to get into the ship. Finn and Fat Asian Bitch take a shuttle to fly to Space Vegas, where they're almost immediately taken captive and thrown in jail for not paying a parking ticket. Meanwhile, Rey meets Luke, who wants her to go away. So get this, when Rey goes to the random planet in the middle of nowhere to find Luke, Luke just throws her lightsaber away and then just kind of walks off and tells her to leave him alone because he wants to die. He says that he came to that planet in the first place specifically to die, which makes no sense because he made a map in the last movie pointing to his location so that if the galaxy ever needed Luke Skywalker, they could find him. Yet now it's just retconned so that he's there to die. Chewie tells Luke that Han died and Luke could not give one fuck less about it. He tells Rey to go away, and in the very next shot, she's going on a morning stroll with him to milk the ballsack tits of a farting elephant person. Next, Luke fishes with the most impractical spear ever made in the history of existence, and they eat fish. Then Rey finds a magical treehouse with books, and Luke asks where she comes from and who she is. Rather than just saying, I had the Force and I need you to teach me how to be a Jedi, she plays word games with him for like 20 minutes, trying to get him to train her, but not actually telling him that she has the Force and needs training. Meanwhile, Chewbacca eats a little porg in front of other porgs and they cry about it. Eventually, Luke figures out that Rey has the Force and he still says no, but then he goes on the Falcon and meets R2 in an admittedly charming scene, and R2 plays the hologram of Leia from A New Hope, which compels Luke to explain in detail why the Jedi are secretly evil. So he takes Rey to a big rock in the middle of nowhere and tells her to close her eyes, reach out, and touch the Force. She closes her eyes and literally reaches a hand out, and Luke decides to fuck with her and brush a stick against her hand. She thinks this is actually the Force, and then Luke slaps her with a stick and throws it away. Now that scene was actually genuinely funny, and I wish there was more of that, but instead Rey feels the Force in the porgs all around the island. The porgs of which are little screaming penguins that this movie masturbates over. I swear, like every 30 seconds they're on the island, you hear them screaming and popping up everywhere. Before I get back to Luke and Rey, let me talk about the aliens in this film. Every single one of them is completely and utterly pointless. The porgs play no role whatsoever. I heard before the movie came out that they were supposed to be vicious, but they all just look really sad when Chewbacca literally cooks and eats one. The llama horses are pretty detailed but also play no significant role. Even the precious crystal fox boys could be taken out of the film and nothing would change. The wildlife was just a prop. Oh well, people like cute animals, right? Maybe that'll distract them from the bullshit plot. Anyway, back to the bullshit plot. Rey immediately goes back to the dark side and breaks a rock. Luke tells her she's stupid for this and says that they can never use the Force because the dark side is there. So remember how the trailers tried to trick you into thinking that Rey might turn to the dark side? Was there anyone in the world that actually thought this would happen? I mean, really, you honestly think that these people would take a risk? You really thought that they would take the biggest Mary Sue ever and then make her a bad guy? Of course that wasn't gonna happen. That would mean that they would have to apply thought or creativity of some kind. So that's the only lesson Luke actually teaches her. She says he'll teach her 3 lessons, but that's the only one he actually teaches. He like briefly mentions how Darth Vader became evil, so that's why the Force is bad, but Rey points out that Luke himself turned Vader into a good guy, which Luke should fucking know because he spent a whole fucking movie doing exactly that. So basically he teaches her one thing which really wasn't a lesson at all. He gives her a pseudo-philosophical monologue that contradicts his own views and experiences, which doesn't even count as a lesson, and then there's straight up no attempt to make a 3rd lesson. So that's fun. So back to Vegas, Finn and Asian bitch find a stuttering lunatic who vaguely claims he can get back into Snoke's ship. They believe him because he snatched a keycard off a guard. BB-8 then murders the guards with slot machine coins and they all escape and make it back to the Resistance. Speaking of which, the Resistance is currently dying. They're down to 1 ship and still no plan has taken shape. Purple-haired feminist bitch decides to abandon ship and Poe rightfully tells her that's a bad idea and takes control of the situation before she can get more people killed. Leia wakes up at this point very conveniently, pops into the bridge, and stun guns Poe. So without knowing the nuance of the situation or what Poe was trying to do, she decides to automatically side with the feminist bitch, and the movie's all like, yeah, Poe was wrong. I'm so glad I watched this movie. So everyone goes into their ships except for the Tumblerina, who stays behind heroically to watch Snoke blow them all out of the sky just like Poe said he would. How great. Rey then looks into a mirror thingy and nothing happens. Oh, I forgot to mention, there was this whole subplot with Rey and Kylo Ren's minds being linked so they could telepathically try to talk to each other. This was a cool concept, but did nothing of value. So Rey sits in her hut and talks to Kylo Ren about being a good guy, and Luke sees this and knows he cannot let this happen. So Rey proceeds to whack him angrily with a stick, and he grabs another stick and they fight. This is the only fight that Luke takes part in. Yes, Luke Skywalker, the hero of the series, the main character, fights Rey with a stick and she wins. What the fuck do you mean mean she wins? Rey had no proper training with a lightsaber or staff. She can use a staff, but for one, that's different from a lightsaber, and two, she never received training with it anyway. So Luke, who was trained by 2 Jedi Masters, who had his own Jedi school, who has been studying the Jedi arts for literal decades, is bested by a girl who about a week ago didn't believe the Force was real and didn't believe Luke himself was real. The movie takes place literal minutes after The Force Awakens ends. The Force Awakens took place at best over the course of like 3 days. This movie is at best around 4 or 5. So Rey, with no training whatsoever, no interesting backstory to support her power, and no handle on the power she has, is able to defeat Luke Skywalker in combat. You have got to be fucking shitting me. And here we learn that Luke decided to totally betray his character. He created Kylo Ren because he looked into his future and saw that he would be evil, so Luke tried to murder him and then he regretted it. Kinda. And Kylo Ren threw him away and burned his school down. So despite everything he learned, everything he went through, everything we know about Luke and everything about his moral code and all the things he stood for is just thrown away because he looked in the future and saw a vague idea of what might happen to Kylo. A future that Luke himself created. So wait, let me get this straight. Luke had a whole movie where he went up to the second most evil person in the entire galaxy, also that he could turn him good because he believed he was good, but yet his own nephew, the son of his sister and his best friend, is too far gone to save, all because he somehow met some random guy, and because you had some very vague vision of him doing bad things. So rather than doing the thing that you did in the 6th movie, you decide to try and kill him. He passes it off as Snoke getting to him first, but it's never explained how Snoke met Kylo in the fucking first place. But the fact that Luke would even consider this after working to turn Darth Vader into a good guy, who threw down his lightsaber in the face of the Emperor because he refused to turn to the dark side, decides to try and murder a child because of a vague vision he had. Are you fucking shitting me? This goes totally against Luke's character. It's a fucking disgrace. The entire original trilogy was Luke learning to become a Jedi Knight who would protect peace and give hope to all. He went through his moody dark phase in Empire and he learned from that. But when it actually matters, after he rejects the dark side, he just goes back to the phase he already conquered several movies ago? They just decided to undo all of the progress he made in the original trilogy because they were too stupid to think of a halfway reasonable explanation for why Kylo turned to the dark side. So Rey decides to go back to the Resistance to save her friends just like Luke did in Empire Strikes Back. Luke tells her it's a bad idea, but she does it anyway. She gets there around the same time that Finn and the gang do as well. While their little group go to disable the tracker, Rey is taken by Kylo Ren to see Snoke in a very Emperor's throne room kind of scene. This would have been really cool if it wasn't immediately fucked up, but we'll get to that in a second. So Finn is almost immediately caught and we're reintroduced to Captain Phasma, the best useless character ever. I swear, she exists only to be in the trailers. She offers nothing of value and is in this movie for like 2 minutes, yet the trailers make it seem like she's supposed to play some prominent role. Just like the last time. They're taken to the hangar to be executed, but the hacker betrays them in a most predictable fashion and they start blowing up rebel ships while they head for a nearby previously unknown rebel planet. So let me really lay this down on you. Snoke is able to throw Rey around the room without lifting a finger with complete and total ease. He literally tears her lightsaber from her grasp and throws it around despite her fighting to use the Force on it too, just to show off how immensely powerful he is. He takes Rey's lightsaber and places it on his armrest next to him. Snoke then tells Kylo Ren to kill Rey, and Snoke gives a self-righteous monologue about how he knows that Kylo Ren will kill his enemy. Kylo then uses the Force to turn Rey's lightsaber a little bit and cuts Snoke in half because he wasn't paying attention. What? So this incredibly evil villain that you've built up since the first movie, who was able to use the Force on a guy through a hologram, who electrocuted Kylo like he was nothing, who threw Rey around the room like a rag doll without even moving, is killed off like a bitch because he wasn't paying attention? This was so unbearably stupid that I just stared open-mouthed at the screen. I couldn't believe that they built up this villain, not give him any backstory, and then killed him off in the most pussy move ever made. So the Tumblerina turns the ship around after the First Order blows up like 90% of the Resistance fleet, because it wasn't until after they were almost all dead that she decided to do something about it. So she turns the ship around, jumps into light speed, and cuts Snoke's ship in half in an admittedly really awesome shot. Kylo and Ren fight off the guards who attack them despite their leader being dead. They kill them, then Kylo turns evil again after just killing his evil master because he wanted to save Rey. Then they fight over Rey's lightsaber despite Kylo's lightsaber being perfectly available right next to him, which makes the lightsaber explode. Finn then kills Captain Phasma in an incredibly predictable way. They steal a shuttle and join the rebels on the Precious Crystal Fox Boy homeworld. The First Order comes and they completely rip off the Hoth scene from Empire. Everyone goes on rickety ships to kill the giant laser cannon, and Finn almost sacrifices himself in a way that would have been really legitimately cool, but fat Asian bitch Deus Ex Machinas him away from heroically saving the day. She says she did it because fighting a war is about saving the ones you love. Well, how the fuck are you gonna save the ones you love if you've let the enemy kill everyone, you stupid bitch? But you know what's really special about this little moment? Okay, so Finn and the Asian are right in front of a whole line of AT-ATs, right? At no point do the AT-ATs fire at them. This allows them to run several miles back to the base. And at no point does anyone think, let's shoot at them. So the Falcon shows up and Rey is on it. Somehow. It never showed her get off Snoke's ship, it just cuts to her shooting shit in the Falcon because... So then Luke shows up and everyone shoots at him and he comes away totally unscathed, so Kylo goes out to fight him and Luke just dodges all of his blows and then Kylo stabs him, but not really because he's just an apparition. Luke is still on the island in the planet in the middle of nowhere and he's making a Force apparition so the others can escape. This was actually a really cool and creative twist and had me grinning when it was revealed. But you know what ruined it? When immediately after he does that, Luke fucking dies! What? Why? He sent a fucking apparition to another planet, an apparition that you could not physically harm or interact with, and Luke just fucking Obi-Wans him into the spirit realm and dies? Just like that. So the main character is brought back to be a pseudo-villain just so you can kill him for literally no reason? Look, I don't mind if Luke dies. I honestly expected it to happen in one of these movies anyway. It was pretty much inevitable. But the way he dies is just insulting. It betrays the world of Star Wars to a degree that's simply unfathomable. They ruined his character, turning him into something he isn't, then killed him as soon as he was introduced, effectively doing nothing. So I may have said that I liked this twist at first, but if the end result is the same, then why didn't he just show up anyway? If anything, this just makes his death stupider since he wasn't physically hurt. But if he was gonna die, then why not just make him go there in the first place? How dare you? How fucking dare you? I honestly expected it to happen in one of these movies anyway. It was pretty much inevitable, but the way he dies is insulting. It betrays the world of Star Wars to a degree that I never thought it could reach. When even Mark Hamill himself says he fundamentally disagrees with the way they wrote his character, you should immediately start over. I've seen characters ruined in movies before. I've seen it in books, in games, in shows, and in comics, but nothing. Absolutely nothing has hit so close to home. The whole 14 or so survivors board the Falcon and fly away, then we get a random shot of a little kid who uses the fucking Force to bring a broom to him. I genuinely thought I was seeing things, but other people on Twitter mentioned it too. I thought it was going fucking crazy, but apparently even fucking 4-year-olds can effortlessly use the Force and make look like a stupid fucking incompetent bitch. It's just so wrong. Lord of the Rings got me into fantasy, but it was Star Wars that got me into sci-fi. Luke Skywalker was the first real hero I'd ever seen. I didn't grow up with Iron Man or Batman. I grew up with Luke Skywalker in the crew of the Millennium Falcon. This is a character I care about, in a story that has never gotten old. Star Wars has left a profound impact on my life, and Luke has always been one of my favorite characters in anything ever. He's not perfect, and that's fine. That's great. I don't want him to be perfect. His journey works because he experienced loss. He went through trials and errors and a meaningful character arc. He was the hero of the story and they totally obliterated him. Everything we experienced with him over the years was just thrown out the window. And Rey, fucking Rey. This is the worst character I've ever seen in this series. This is the worst character I think I've ever seen in film. She is an irredeemable Mary Sue who never earns it. I can't possibly be compelled by a character who goes through no training, yet bests the hero of the series. Keep in mind, these past couple films have taken place over a time span of days. Days! She didn't even believe in Luke Skywalker a week and a half ago. Yet now she's better than him without training from anyone? She knows how to use the Force despite never hearing of it or seeing it in use? At least, Luke saw Obi-Wan use the Force in the first film. We saw him training on the Falcon. We had the whole movie of him training under Yoda. Yet Rey just gets a pass? She doesn't have to deal with any of the trials Luke has. She does the same thing in this movie that he did in Empire, yet comes away unscathed without a single repercussion. How am I supposed to care about a character who has had everything handed to her on a silver platter? How can I relate to a character that goes through nothing? Luke lost friends and family. He lost his hand. He was broken when Vader revealed himself to be his father. Rey went through what? Losing parents she never knew in the first place? Losing Han Solo, who she knew for a day? She can fly ships she's never been in before. Use a power she didn't believe in the day earlier. Best not only a pupil of Luke Skywalker in combat, but can best Luke himself. Can use the Force to clear away half a mountain with ease when Luke struggled to lift an X-Wing, and can accomplish all of this in a time span of less than a couple weeks. Luke took years of training between A New Hope and Return of the Jedi. He took years of character development to become the hero we all know and love. Rey just instantaneously has everything she needs. She's conveniently smarter than Luke when it benefits her. Luke has to have a fucking talk with Yoda in this movie because apparently his character has gone so far down the shitter and Rey just gets off scot-free. On top of that, the writing in this film is simply dreadful, relying on plot conveniences and deus ex machinas throughout the entire experience. There never once felt like there was a moment of risk. Luke's death only blindsided me because he died in the absolute dumbest way I've ever seen in my life. Otherwise, nothing bad happens to the main cast. Whenever it looks as though someone's in danger, something happens to fix it. Be it BB-8 controlling an ATST, fat Asian bitch knocking Finn out of the way, the hacker guy showing up at the rescue at precisely the right moment. The list goes on and on. The way the Force is used is extremely inconsistent and at points contradictory. Alien animals are used as dumb props rather than something relevant to the narrative. There are various gaping plot holes, like where Snoke fits into everything, how he got to Kylo Ren despite him being at Luke's Jedi school, how Leia magically became an interdimensional space fairy immune to the vacuum of space, how Captain Phasma survived, how the First Order got the technology to track them through light speed, where and how the First Order got so many resources and men after the destruction of the Empire, how the Resistance boils down to a couple thousand people despite being in control of the galaxy for 30 years, why C-3PO's red arm is suddenly gone, and furthermore why it was there in the first place, how Rey, despite having no training in any field, was able to use the Force without ever seeing it in practice or knowing how to use it, or how she was able to beat Luke Skywalker in a one-on-one duel. I could literally go on forever about why this movie is so stupid. It really, truly breaks my heart to even make this video. Star Wars has been a part of my life since I was 5. Even though there's mountains of criticism for the franchise as a whole, criticism that I have made, I still love it. Even as bad as the prequels were, as poorly written as The Force Awakens was, as poorly developed and paced as Rogue One was, despite all the criticisms I have, and criticisms of others that I respect, criticisms that I agree with wholeheartedly, I still own all of the movies and I still enjoy all of them. I think there's always gonna be a part of me that loves Star Wars because it's directly affected my life. It gave me a lifelong fascination with space and technology, aliens, and science fiction stories. It presented characters that were unforgettable, who I've spent most of my life remembering fondly. The very idea of Star Wars brings up a host of pleasant memories, even in the films I didn't think were particularly good, like The Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones. I've never truly hated a Star Wars film, but this movie, I have hated. I hold only burning contempt for this film. I could still enjoy The Force Awakens to some level. I could still enjoy moments of the prequels. I could still enjoy Rogue One. But this, I can't enjoy this. And what's worse is that this will forever ruin my image of Star Wars. It was one thing to pass off the prequels for their contradictions because they were comically bad. You could hardly take them seriously, and it didn't hurt when it was a great trilogy. But just the knowledge that in the future, these characters that I came to love would become caricatures of themselves, would contradict their own moral codes and values, would become people they were never meant to be, would betray everything they ever were, hurts the original trilogy and all the good memories that come along with it. I never thought the day would come where I really truly hated a Star Wars movie. I never thought that something I love would be destroyed in such an insulting way. But The Last Jedi is an abomination. It is a disgrace. It is an insult. It ruins everything and anything that is Star Wars, and I cannot forgive that. I will not watch Episode 9. I won't watch the shitty Han Solo movie. I won't watch Rian Johnson's next 3-movie abortion. I'm done. I'm done doing it. I won't sit around and watch as Disney and their shitty directors continue to ruin something I held dear for so long. And honestly, some of the responses I've received and seen on the internet just disappoint the hell out of me. People saying that you're not a true fan if you don't like this movie, that you don't know anything about Star Wars, that you're just a mindless hater. That shit gets under my skin. That shit pisses me off. It's people like that, the people that accept this shit without a second thought, that emboldens me to keep making videos like this, to keep criticizing these films, to keep lashing out at directors and writers and actors that can do nothing more than make disasters for the lowest common denominator. My appreciation for film extends far beyond this series. I could talk for months about my love for so many incredible movies, but talking about that doesn't necessarily help ease the issue that so many bad movies have. I liked only a few films that came out this year. I saw so many movies, and maybe 5 or 6 of them I actually liked. I have criticisms of all of those films, but still enjoy them and think they're all worth watching. But those films are dwarfed by the staggering amount of horrible, shitty, low-tier pieces of cinematic filth that infests the movie industry. And it's people like these fanboys that accept whatever piece of shit film they see and say, "This is okay, I like this shit," that we receive so many unimaginative, poorly written, poorly shot disasters that pale in comparison to films made decades ago. Yeah, I may not be super positive on this channel, but you know what? I'm honest about it. I'll call out this horse shit, and I'll keep calling it out until I see an actual change. I'm not going to stand for these SJW remakes and continuous sequels that do nothing more than parade the corpse of a dead franchise for all to see. I've seen too many excellent movies and shows to just bend over and take Hollywood's dick in my ass for whatever garbage they shit out to the public. The Last Jedi is the final straw. I will no longer support this series. I refuse to consider anything beyond Return of the Jedi as canon. Blindly accepting these things, rejecting valid criticisms, and labeling people critical of them as not true fans is the very reason we got so many shitty sequels. The amount of bad Star Wars films now dwarf the good ones. The more we say this is okay, the more times we're going to get something like Jurassic World 2, the sequel to one of the shittiest fucking sequels I've ever seen. A sequel that looks so startlingly awful that I'm blown away there's even a single like on that video. We're going to keep getting more remakes, more reboots, more sequels, rather than truly original films that challenge and captivate us, that tell good stories that we'll remember for the rest of our lives. As long as we keep telling them that this is okay, the more we're going to get fucked like this. The Last Jedi is a disgrace. Its only redeemable qualities are the visuals and the music. It's a narrative abortion that destroys everything good about the characters and the universe, that contradicts the lore, that treats the series with unfathomable disrespect, that gives a giant middle finger to everyone that gives a shit about this series. Hope you guys are ready for Disney to start parading X-Men and aliens around since they own half the fucking film industry at this point. Fuck Rian Johnson, fuck Disney, and more importantly,